Welcome to A Moment of Xen. Time to sit back and relax as model, actress, mentor, and supermom Xen Sams takes you on a sexy and wild ride, covering the latest in film, fashion, pop culture, politics, and entertainment from the millennial mom's perspective. Here's your host, Xen Sams.
Welcome to the show, my beautiful people. Remember to join me right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, every Saturday night from 7 to 8 p.m. or go to 710WOR.iheart.com/A Moment of Xen. You can watch fully uploaded episodes as of Monday morning. Please make sure to follow me on social media at Xen Sams. That's Xen with an X. And you can also text the word collaboration or feature me to 917-575-2321. Again, that number is 917-575-2321. Now, today's show is very exciting and very special. We have an incredible lineup of guests. Republican Congressman Joe Collins of California's 43rd Congressional District will be joining us. We're also going to be speaking with Diana Florence, currently running for New York City District Attorney. She's going to be discussing her candidacy and what she plans on doing for our beloved city. My close friend, Allison Josephs, founder of Jew in the City, is going to be stopping by, and we're going to be debunking certain myths about the Orthodox Jewish community. But a highlight of today's show is fellow mom, journalist, and author of Weed Mama. Now let's get real. During the pandemic, alcohol culture has amplified. It seems that anytime is wine o'clock. And Danielle Simone Brand, definitely don't want to mess up a guest's name, author of Weed Mom, the Canna Curious Woman's Guide to Healthier Relaxation, Happier Parenting, and Chilling the F Out, is coming on to authorize us all to inhale some and ditch alcohol altogether. So very exciting stuff. Now, I wanted to shift the attention to Atlantic City and briefly discuss this. And why, you ask? Well, Stockton University's Lloyd D. Levinson Institute of Gaming, Hospitality, and Tourism, otherwise known as LIGHT, surveyed more than 800 people recently to gauge their attitudes and opinions on AC. The poll found strong enthusiasm amongst the majority for returning to the New Jersey beachfront gaming town in the very near future. Of the 806 respondents, 46% said they plan to visit Atlantic City within the next 3 months, and another 26% said they're likely to do so within 3 to 6 months. So all of that is so promising. And with the Hamptons being oversaturated, I'm kind of turned off. Long lines, long wait times, and lots of attitude. So I'm shifting my focus to the world's playground. That's right, Atlantic City. That is where I will be heading this summer. I love the Ocean Casino Resort. And so does my daughter. Alexa's only 5.5 years old, and she's always finding something curious. She's always finding something to dig her hands into, and these beautiful, curious spots in the hotel leave a child's imagination wandering, and she definitely loves being there. Also, my husband, Brad, he's definitely all about going there and hanging out with his buddies. So I do hope you're going to be joining me there this summer. It's time we all got back to normal. And with vaccines being distributed and many visitors saying they plan to soon return, there's a growing sense of optimism, in my opinion, at least for Atlantic City. Now, the summer months are when Atlantic City sees its highest visitor volumes. Casino stakeholders and the gaming industry analysts have expressed bullishness on the city's recovery. That's a good thing. Now, while most concerts and performances have been canceled through July, which is kind of a bummer, Atlantic City is hoping to have a star-studded entertainment lineup for the later part of the summer. Notable August bookings that remain scheduled include Wyclef Jean on August 14th at the Borgata, John Legend on August 21st at the Borgata, and Kiss. Yep, Kiss is coming back, baby, on August 21st at the Jim Wellen Boardwalk Hall. Now, in the meantime, let's get this show off the ground. You're listening to A Moment of Xen on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this with Republican Congressman Joe Collins of California's 43rd Congressional District, who's, by the way, directly opposed, the direct opponent to Maxine Waters. We'll be right back after this.
If you've missed out dining in New York City for the past year, it's time to visit the legendary Vice Cucina. Located in the heart of Midtown, Vice specializes in blending delicious Northern Italian and American cuisine with dishes such as the incredible taglione lobster, ravioli masala, ossobuco, and pappardelle al telefono, along with many other mouthwatering offerings. You deserve a great night out. Call Vice Cucina 212-757-2600 or online at vicecucina.com.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Xen Sams. Welcoming to the show, we have Joe Collins. For those unfamiliar, Joe Collins is a U.S. Navy veteran, South LA native, and Republican frontrunner for California's 43rd Congressional District. Now, you've all heard of Maxine Waters by now. She may be the most hated politician out there who almost cost us the George Floyd verdict earlier this month because she just couldn't control her mouth. Now, Maxine defeated Joe in the general election for U.S. House California District 43 back in November, but the tables have turned on Maxine now. After Judge Peter Cahill's declaration that her recent comments could have led to the overturn of the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd, she's not that popular anymore. Joe Collins and other prominent Republicans called for her immediate removal, including House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So the one thing that we all agree on was that the Derek Chauvin trial definitely went the right way, guilty on all three counts. And we all agreed on that. But Maxine decided to run her mouth almost, a day before, jeopardizing the outcome of the case. And she tried using her political power to influence the court's decision. What gives?
She does it all the time. But what she said was extremely reckless. Sometimes she has to learn how to keep her mouth shut. Never in the history of the United States has a cop ever been indicted and charged for killing a Black person. And her opening up her mouth, it shows the pure ignorance that she has, because the jurors were not sequestered. So they heard everything. They were hearing everything that were going on the outside of the courtroom. When they take their breaks, they get on social media, when they get home. A lot of them may have felt threatened. They may have felt pressured to vote in that favor because of what she said, instead of letting the judicial system play itself out this time.
Wow. And do you think that there will be legal action as a result of this?
I'm not 100% certain. I know that they are going to take the case up to appeal, and it might get thrown out, just because of her. And I think that that's going to be extremely damaging to the Black community, especially in Los Angeles, where she represents. Now,
listen, Joe, everyone, for those of you that are listening and can't see Joe, you will be able to see tomorrow when we upload the stream. But Joe is a proud Black man, proud Republican, and your district has a lot of issues. Now, I know, Max, you grew up in the same district that Maxine Waters has a huge mansion in, and she's not even aware of the issues within her own district. And I want to highlight this. You managed to receive nearly double the votes of any Republican in the history of the district, and basically out fundraised Waters 5-1. And now you're finally gaining momentum again because you filed to rerun California's 43rd Congressional District again for 2022. But the irresponsibility in leadership and the way Maxine is commanding, if you will, her district, what are the biggest issues that you plan on changing within that district, and the biggest issues that you see that reflect not just within your community, but nationwide?
I think for me, it's jobs. We need better jobs. That's where you start. One of the biggest problems we have right now is homeless. And the homelessness that we have is not from people with mental health problems. On any given night, you have over 160,000 people plus that are sleeping on the streets. And these people they have money, they have income, they have their sanity, but the cost of living is so high. But the job market out here is extremely poor. So I want to bring quality jobs back to our district, and I want to figure out a way to lower that cost of living. Because the Gavin Newsom, California is in terrible shape. They tax us to death. It's a sanctuary state. They're giving the majority of the tax money to different businesses that has nothing to do with improving California. They give a lot of money to illegal immigrants, and These are things that got to change. After I get quality jobs back, then we have to focus on education. We have to rebuild our education system in California. I think we're number 47 out of the 50 states when it comes to education. That's extremely bad. Our high school graduation rate is around 77%, and our college graduation rate is around 22%. So we have to be able to increase those numbers and be able to provide the type of quality of life that the people from the 43rd district deserves.
Wow, that's you know what, you have a good grip on where things truly stand, and that makes me really happy. I mean, I wish I could be there and vote for you. But listen, one thing I want to highlight is you made it a key point in your campaign to reduce incidents of police violence through what you say are practical solutions such as more police training and removing legislators and city officials who have failed to fix these longstanding issues, especially in urban communities. How are you gonna? That's a huge undertaking, really. I mean, at this point right now, you would be stuck between a rock and a hard place because you have a lot of work to do. What's the best way that you're going to tackle this police reform?
Well, we've been working with law enforcement here in California and rebuilding the relationship between the community and the law enforcement, and it's been working out pretty good. One of the hardest parts about it is, the amount of violence that we have in our own communities from each other, the gang violence, the domestic violence. And so we got to figure out a way to slow that down before we can continue to build the relationship with the law enforcement. But this is something that everybody wants. It's just, finding a solution, finding a way to make it work. And we reached out to Mayor Garcetti and a few of the city council members, and we've made a little bit of progress, but these guys are just extremely lazy. That's why removing them from office and replacing them with somebody who actually wants to get involved and wants to help is a more plausible solution. But it's coming up with a plan and making sure that plan get pushed throughout the different levels of the local government.
And now you are also, you've talked about creating paths for families to create generational wealth. And that sounds great. I mean, how do you get there, right? So the families within your community that haven't had opportunities because of their circumstances, because of their income, because of their whatever it is, their gender, their color. How do you plan on addressing within the community, creating these paths for families to get on a better path, whether it's generational wealth, whether it's helping small businesses? What's your plan for this?
Well, when I was in the U.S. Navy, I became a financial planner, an estate planner, and I helped a lot of people get their financial futures taken care of through different organizations that I was able to join and get licensed through. And so I think using the information that I learned and displaying on public display the different avenues that are available for people to be able to get that financial literacy is what I plan on doing. I was with World Financial Group, and they have classes once or twice a week, but people don't know about this. I think that if you could spend $500 on some Jordans, you can put $500 away to get a life insurance policy or to get some type of retirement plan to help you out. And these are things that people have to learn. These are things that people have to know about. And I plan on doing it that way. It's fairly, I don't want to say it's easy, but I think it's extremely doable. People have to be able to want it. I know it's not going to be able to help everybody because a lot of people are still going to be skeptical, but we can help the majority of the people get their financial future set up just by introducing them to simple life insurance policies.
Wow, that's great. That's very helpful. And not only does it sound like a feasible plan, but it's actually realistic. And being in touch with the community, being able to get out there on the streets, figure out what their individual needs are, figure out what their collective needs are, that's a different approach that the average politician has not taken. So kudos to you. Now, your district saw a 33% increase in murders between 2019 and 2020, and about 150% increase during the first 30 days of 2021 alone. Is this because there is a lack of policing on the streets, or is this because crime has truly been exacerbated because of the pandemic?
I think it's just a lack of leadership. We know that Gavin Newsom let 18,000 people out of prison for, I guess, the COVID pandemic and everything. But I think that has something to do with it. The lack of leadership has something to do with it. The lack of quality jobs. I mean, like, people are really out here struggling. They can't go to work because the majority of the businesses were shut down. And a lot of people are just extremely angry. They're extremely fed up with the way things have been going. So I'm going to contribute that to the lack of leadership that we've been having here in California.
Wow. And that's true. I mean, there's lack of leadership across the board. Here in New York, we're experiencing the same thing. Poor leadership, strong teachers unions. These kids are not going back to school in any certain kind of way as of now. And every parent is at the edge of their seats trying to figure out when things will get back to normal. The vaccine has been rolled out. We know that in Texas, for instance, the mask mandate has been dropped now going on 6 or 7 weeks. When we ask Dr. Fauci, why is it that there's no uptick in COVID cases without the mask mandate? He says, I don't know. What do you want to, what's your take on the mask, COVID, the vaccine? Do you feel like enough's enough? Like we need to get back to reality here? Or do you feel like all of this is being played out exactly how it should be and we should be cautious?
I think the whole entire thing with the COVID-19, the virus, that the super killer, has been a lot of BS. And the reason why I say that is because I've seen a lot of viruses, especially in the military, and a mask is not going to help, you know? So when you look at somebody who works on a virus inside a laboratory, they have the full bodysuit on and they have to get cleansed when they come in and out of that space where the virus is. And you're telling us this type of virus where people, it's supposed to be so deadly that people can just put a mask on and stay 6 feet away from each other and then, you know, it automatically goes away. We're supposed to be safe, but it hasn't been the case. I don't think social distancing works. I don't think the masks work. I don't think any of that stuff works, especially when the recovery rate is 99.9%. And then you only have a 0.07% chance of catching this thing. And even with the vaccine rollouts, you have a vaccine that people are using that the test on every for anything other than emergency use. And so to perpetrate at a vaccine that hasn't been tested is going to work with a virus that recovery rate is 99.9% is just absolutely ridiculous to me.
And Joe, before we sign off, we have just a few minutes, 1 minute left here. What is it that once and for all you want to tell the audience with respect to you're the front runner now for California's 43rd congressional district, and it's time is of the essence. People need to get out and vote when the time is right and know about all your policy changes and everything that you want to implement. What's the best way that people could check you out?
Go to my website, joecollinsforcongress.com.
joecollinsforcongress.com. You are listening to A Moment of Xen. I am your host, Xen Sams, on 710 WOR. Thank you, Joe, for taking the time to talk to us. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We'll be right back after this, guys.
One of the world's most recognized fashion designers is Helen Yarmak. She turned a small clothing line to an international fashion brand and is one of the few independent luxury fashion houses in the industry. Her designs for men and women are timeless and they outlast changing trends, yet they stay adaptable to your individual style. Helen's goal for her clients is to express their individual uniqueness and beauty. To learn more about her offerings, visit HelenYarmak.com or to schedule an appointment, call 212-245-0777.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Xen Sams. Now let's get real. During the pandemic, alcohol culture has amplified. It seems that any time is wine o'clock, especially for us overburdened moms. Now, journalist Danielle Simone Brand, and author of Weed Mom, the Canna Curious Woman's Guide to Healthier Relaxation, Happier Parenting, and Chilling TF Out, ditched alcohol altogether and pivoted towards the age-old plant. We're talking about medicinal cannabis for stress relief and as a social alternative to alcohol. She's just one of a growing number of mamas who are trading mimosas for cannabis. And as shown in the Good Morning America segment, weed moms are the new wine moms. Her book explains cannabis benefits over alcohol, particularly for moms, how being a cannabis advocate and having a medicinal license, I can attest to all those benefits, and I will say that right now. And I can't wait to meet this amazing mom authorizing us to inhale, covering the intersections of parenting and cannabis. Her aim is to push the conversation to a more progressive place. Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you so much, Xen. I'm really happy to be here with you.
Okay, so let's get down to business, right? As a major cannabis advocate and somebody who completely endorses the science behind medicinal cannabis, specifically, I advocate this all the time. I don't even like to use the word weed sometimes because I feel like it's a bastardization of what the preconceived idea of what people think, weed means and smoking up. What do you feel are the biggest preconceived ideas and myths pertaining to marijuana use?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think we're still swimming in those stereotypes. Even though, the legalization landscape has changed and, people's usage is changing, we still have these sort of mainstream stereotypes about cannabis users. And that's that, they're lazy, unmotivated, can't get stuff done. If you're a mom in particular, I think a lot of people think that's irresponsible, that feels like, you can't keep your kids safe while you're using cannabis. And I know none of those things to be true. I know that I'm a productive, healthy, happy, better mom with cannabis in my life. And so that's really why I wrote this book, to help people understand that, to help get that to more of a mainstream audience.
Was there a defining moment in your life where you turned to cannabis?
Yes, absolutely. And it actually wasn't until a few years ago, until I was in my late 30s, mom of two, and really cannabis wasn't on my radar for me personally. But I was living in California at the time. It had just become recreationally legal, and I was seeing stores and billboards and absolutely, starting to realize that cannabis was becoming a more normal part of everyday life. And at the same time, I was a freelance journalist and started to get some assignments about cannabis. So I actually started writing about it before I even learned about it myself or even cared about it. But as I continued to write, I fell in love with it. It bridges science and wellness and, politics and policy and social justice, all kinds of issues that you can bring together. And I was a yoga teacher for years before I was a writer. And so I decided to experiment with cannabis on my yoga mat. I got, a very low dose vape pen, very, discreet and easy entry sort of product. And I took one and I had a beautiful embodied present yoga practice, and I realized I've been missing out. This is something that could really add to my life.
I echo your sentiment, and I have a defining moment as well. In 2012, I had a trip and fall accident over a Con Edison wire cover, and I fractured my face. I currently have a metal plate under my orbital and 4 screws down my nasal passage. And in 2012, when I was healing, I was handed a whole bunch of Vicodin and Percocet, and basically told to go deal with the pain and the swelling. But that's when I resorted to medicinal cannabis, ointments, derma patches, oils. And back in 2012, if it even wasn't that, it was more taboo than now, really. So I became a huge advocate as a result of that. Do you believe that marijuana should replace some of the more main street prescription drugs that currently treat mental health disorder, anxiety, postpartum depression, and PTSD?
I think that with caution, they can. I'm going to say yes. And I think that it depends on the person, the individual, and it depends on medical, providers really being aware and informed about how cannabis can help with many of these things. Small doses, right timing can really affect people's mental health. Absolutely. It can help with anxiety, with depression, with PTSD, and, more and more studies and anecdotal evidence is really pointing in that direction. And of course, we have medicinal cannabis for pain and for nausea and for muscle spasticity and all kinds of things that, people can be taking prescriptions for, or they really can be leaning on a plant, something natural that's been part of human experience for, thousands of years, really.
Exactly. Thousands of years. This has been around for thousands of years. It's naturally occurring in nature. And if used properly, it is an incredible alternative to some of the more harsher chemicals that we often rely on to get us through our day. Do you feel that there's a ton of mommy shame taking place specifically with marijuana use?
I think that if you can mom circles, if you will, or weed mom circles, they're breaking this down and talking about it and really dissecting the stereotypes. But I think that in mainstream circles, there's still a lot of shame and taboo and just, unwillingness to talk about it. I think people are doing it more than they're willing to talk about doing it at this point.
I think you're right, and I think we need to start to have healthier conversations and allow people to feel comfortable talking about it, and not label people who use cannabis as, drug addicts or dependent people on something that is basically controlling their mind. I know for a fact that cannabis could be soothing and relaxing, could help with a laundry list of things. Do you believe that now with New York City going rec, Jersey going rec, we have a lot of states here turning to let's go weed. Do you think that this is a new era that we're or the weed boom that we're stepping into?
I do. And I think it's been going on for a few years, but it's just building momentum and ramping up now. We're seeing weeds. That's funny. We're seeing states legalize weed just rapidly, one after the other. And I think that even some federal movement is possible in the next few years in terms of maybe decriminalization first, maybe not, across the board legalization. But I think that we're really in a moment where the conversation is progressing rapidly, and the pandemic opened up some of that possibility for conversations too. The fact that so many of us, as you mentioned in the beginning, we're stuck at home, with our kids all the time, 24/7 parenting, many of us working at the same time, and just feeling like, alcohol was not meeting our needs to relax in the way that we really, that the pandemic really called on us for, right? So alcohol, it leads to sugar cravings, to cortisol spikes, to hangovers, headaches for many people. And cannabis, when used properly, doesn't really have any of those side effects. And I think that's really key for moms. We don't have time for hangovers. We don't have time to feel bad.
And also no calories. So I think the average mom would love to resort to something that's not contributing to packing on, extra pounds for sure. Guys, you're listening to A Moment of Xen. We just finished an incredible interview with journalist Danielle Simone Brand, and she's the author of Weed Mom, the Canna Curious Woman's Guide to Healthier Relaxation, Happier Parenting, and Chilling the F out. Tell us where we can get your book, and if there's a website, and how can people find you?
Yeah, sure. So my book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any place you buy your books online, or you could ask your local bookstore to carry it as well. And people can find me. I mostly speak about my book on Instagram, so that's at Danielle Simone Brand.
Thank you so much. It was incredible interviewing you. I had such fun, and I hope to have you back soon.
Same here. Thanks so much, Xen.
You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Xen Sams. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by Romulus Entertainment and Independent Film Company in a partnership with Paramount. Two of their films, Dreamland, starring Margot Robbie and Finn Cole, tells the story of a teenager and his quest to capture a fugitive bank robber, only to discover she's far more than what she seems. And Jungle Land, about a fighter and his brother as they travel the country for one last fight, and the companion that exposes cracks in their relationship. Both Jungle Land and Dreamland are available on various platforms and streaming services.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Xen Sams. Joining us next, we have my dear friend, Allison Josephs, founder of Jew in the City. Now, Jew in the City reverses negative associations by religious Jews by highlighting an approach based on kindness, tolerance, sincerity, and critical thinking. Now, there's a few words I want to share with you. Backwards, extreme, judgmental, sexist. These words are often the ones that come to mind when people think of Orthodox Jews and Judaism. And scandals that reinforce these associations often hit the papers. Public opinion is at best uneducated about Orthodox Jews and Judaism, at worst intolerant of them and their philosophy. And even more troubling, there's a sizable minority of people who were raised Orthodox but had very bad experiences due to unhealthy upbringings and poor education. They just feel as perhaps they are the ones who have been the black sheep of the family. And here to break it all down for us is a friend, a fellow mom, and super soul, Allison Josephs. Allison, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So what is the main difference between Orthodox Jewish people and the other sects?
Orthodox has sort of some basic beliefs. I would say, just in terms of belief, there's a belief in God, there's a belief in the divinity of the Torah, and there's a belief in following Jewish law. Some of the other sects, Reform, Conservative, kind of came along to, I would say, loosen things up, less clear, if the Torah is from God, less clear that we have to keep these laws. So in terms of our beliefs, that's where we are. And then in terms of our observance, I would say sort of the Big Tent umbrella definition of Orthodox is Sabbath observant, being kosher, the dietary laws, and then going to the mikveh, the Jewish ritual bath.
And what are the biggest preconceived ideas about growing up Hasidic?
So I think the first thing, actually, you just gave me a great opening, that people sort of confuse Hasidic with Orthodox. I think people see the two as the same, whereas Hasidic is a piece of Orthodox, but it's not the entire community. Traditional media really only highlights Hasidic Jews and doesn't show the range of Orthodox Jews. So I'm Orthodox. I cover my hair. I don't shave my hair. I went to Columbia University. I travel all around the world. What we see in media is basically a very narrow, dysfunctional depiction of the Hasidic community, as opposed to all the people that live broader lives and the people that live healthy lives.
Thank you for that explanation. That puts much more into perspective than prior. Now, you coined the name for the discrepancy in the amount of skin society expects women to show in the same social setting as men, and it's called the skin gap. You guys can actually check it out, theskingap.com. Can you tell us the notion behind this concept?
Yeah, so I grew up, one of my nicknames going to one of my travels camps when I was in high school was Daisy Duke, because I loved those shorts. I was the girl in the bikini. I'm looking back even in my pre-Orthodox days. All my friends were always wearing more clothing. I was the one, sort of showing off more skin. And I think the messaging I got from a very young age is that if you've got it, flaunt it. And this is sort of what we're supposed to do if we look good. And I didn't think of myself as a modest person. In fact, I actually thought of modesty as dowdiness and old-fashioned and freaky-deaky religious. But what ended up happening was that I would get ogled by men sometimes, and it would make me feel kind of gross or weird. And I just sort of pushed those feelings down because I didn't know anything else to do with those feelings, because I was doing what I was supposed to do as a young, attractive American girl. And when I became Orthodox in my teens, I took on observance slowly. And one of the things I took on was modesty, not because I believed in it, but because it was one of the rules and I wanted to follow it. And what ended up happening was that I found an empowerment in being able to make a separation between myself and the ogling eyes of the men passing by. And I think so often we see with shows like Unorthodox and different, ex-Hasidic memoirs that come out, this version of modesty where it's about men controlling women. People think of ISIS. We have really in our mind the subjugation that happens when modesty is forced, and forced modesty is horrible. But the question is there a certain way that we are subjugated when the expectation of society tells women and girls to show off their bodies? And my sister actually came up with this when she was doing her women's studies major at Barnard. She realized walking down the street, your average woman is wearing a lot less clothing than men are. Not because, yes, we're choosing it, but also, fashion is sort of promoting this for us. On a hot day, you'll see a woman in a tank top and short shorts and a, midriff bearing shirt. The guy next to her is in a t-shirt and, cargo shorts and pretty covered. At a formal affair, the man is in a tuxedo and covering from his toes to his neck to his wrist. The woman next to him is, strapless, high slit, low back. Again, this is what we're fed by media, by the fashion industry. So it just seems normal to dress like this. And the question is there something that is hurting girls and women when our bodies are on display? And so the skin gap is the expectation by society that we put our bodies more on display. And what we're asking is, if we expect equality in every other sphere, why do girls, starting in toddler years, there was a mommy blogger that actually saw on Target that the girls' shorts starting at 2T were 7 inches shorter than the boys' shorts. So why are we feeding these messages, from the youngest age that our bodies are being on display? Does that add an extra pressure for us to be perfect, to have our bodies talked about, to increase our self-consciousness? So the Skin Gap is a video that we made at theskingap.com in order to highlight this and get a conversation started.
So theskingap.com, and that people can just go check out that video that was created. Now, In recent news, there was 3 members of a German women's team at the European Artistic Gymnastics Championship in Switzerland. They gained attention for their outfits, and unlike their peers, their legs were fully covered, right? So they wore full body unitards when most women typically wear leotards that show the entire leg. Note that male gymnasts, however, usually wear either slightly loose shorts or full length leg coverings. What is this brouhaha about? And was this perceived as a statement against sexualization in gymnastics?
Yeah, so Sarah Voss, this German gymnast, started it. And I think it started because one of her teammates, the leotard slipped and some compromising photos ended up online, and she actually felt very uncomfortable. And I think they got to thinking, why do we get less fabric than men do? And so they sort of started a movement. There is also a an English gymnast that spoke out as well, that they feel like there is this pressure. But it's not just in gymnastics, it's also in, volleyball. The men get, sort of loose-fitting tank tops and long shorts. The girls are kind of in these hot pants and bikini tops. If you look at golf, Michelle Wie, wears a short skirt, and that's what's expected now for the women to wear. Tiger Woods wears long pants. So, Rudy Giuliani commented on Michelle Wie's panties a couple of months ago, which was obviously totally inappropriate and not nice at all. But at the same time, no one ever talks about Tiger Woods' underwear because he's wearing pants. And so the question that, I'm thinking of, that I think these gymnasts are thinking of, maybe if we have the same amount of fabric as men, our bodies can be out of the picture and we can just focus on our sport, our talents, our, personal characteristics, and not the body that is holding all of that.
You have such incredible insight. I love hearing you speak. You give really good advice, and you give a unique perspective from a very interesting community. And I think that your community is beautiful and great, and I cherish and value everything you represent. And I think that there's common ground in every religion. And what would you like to see transpire in the future for Judaism, and specifically the Hasidic community? Do you believe some of the rules and laws within the community should adapt more to the generation, or where do you see this going? We have about 2 minutes left.
All right, I'll wrap it up. Okay, so 2 things. I would like to see better media representation of the Hasidic and Orthodox community, show more diversity in the media, show actually healthy people. I think, unfortunately, the problems that come to the forefront, and I actually work with an ex-Hasidic population in our organization. It's a division called Makom. These are basically all the cases of Holocaust trauma. The Hasidic community is nearly 100% survivors or descendants of survivors. And after the war, they basically went into this really closed community because they were so afraid of everything outside. And so where there are unhealthy patterns in the community, and there are some, I believe this is by and large based on Holocaust trauma that has been passed on. So I think the community needs to work on those pieces, to do the healing, to do the mental health work, to finally break those dysfunctional cycles. And that's some of the stuff that we're working on in our organization. At the same time, dysfunction is not normative. Dysfunction is the stuff that went wrong. And there's so much beauty in the Hasidic community. There's so much beauty in the Orthodox community, in the laws themselves, in the way of life when it's practiced in a healthy positive way. And so we would like the media to get to know us and stop only believing the stories of the people who had bad experiences as the narrative, because it's one slice. And at the same time, the community needs to do the healing that they have to do, because that's where I would say those negative stories and those painful, things that come out, really based on dysfunctional people.
Thank you so much for your input, your insight. You're a mom, you're a wife, you're an entrepreneur, a business person. Thank you for coming to the show. You're listening to A Moment of Xen. That was Allison Josephs from Jew in the City. What is the website?
JewInTheCity.com. Thank
you for coming on the show, Allison.
Thank you.
You're listening to A Moment of Xen. I'm your host, Xen Sams, right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by Romulus Entertainment and Independent Film Company in a partnership with Paramount. 2 of their films, Dreamland, starring Margot Robbie and Finn Cole, tells the story of a teenager and his quest to capture a fugitive bank robber, only to discover she's far more than what she seems. And Jungle Land, about a fighter and his brother as they travel the country for one last fight, and the companion that exposes cracks in their relationship. Both Jungle Land and Dreamland are available on various platforms and streaming services.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Xen Sams. Welcoming to the show, we have Diana Florence. Now, Diana began her career as a prosecutor 25 years ago in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. She fought for people who never thought they'd win. She went after large-scale corruption. She won landmark convictions against companies and individuals for defrauding 9/11 charities, wage theft, and deadly work conditions. She prosecuted developers and construction companies for cheating workers and taxpayers. And in a historic case against Harco Construction, she ultimately secured justice for the family of a 22-year-old construction worker, Carlos Moncayo, who was buried alive at work. Diana believes in redirecting, not decreasing, the power of the district attorney's office. Now she's running for DA herself. And although to some it's impossible to discuss her candidacy without addressing her early 2020 resignation, I'm going to let Diana tell you herself why that chapter came to an end and what she plans on doing differently if she wins. Welcome to the show, fellow mom, Diana Florence, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first of all, working for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office as a woman, surrounded by so many powerful men, you saw a lot of things going down behind the scenes: corruption, lies, bribery. You saw your ex-boss, even Cyrus Vance Jr., sweep a lot of things under the rug when it was convenient for him, and you often at times held your own. How do you feel your career would have been different if you were a man?
Oh, there's no question it would have been different. I mean, along the way, things that I did, which would be celebrated in a man, standing up to powerful interests, bringing the hard cases, even against people that are generally, sort of celebrated in our culture, was looked on as being pushy and sort of knowing my place. So I think very different. I would have been much more celebrated as opposed to the outsider that I was for most of my career.
Wow, it's hard being a woman in general, especially in an industry that's filled with so many powerful men. And working for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office as a woman, throughout your career, you saw a lot of things happen and transpire. Now, the one thing I always want to address to the listeners who are out there, women out there in the workforce, mothers, how do you feel that within the construction task force, that was there ever any bias against certain demographics or minorities? A lot of people like to stereotype, if you will. And what do you say to that? Because I know that you're all about equality and really kind of paving the way to bring justice to the front lines.
Yeah, so, I worked, most of my career was under Morgenthau. And I learned under Robert Morgenthau, that you really needed to follow the facts without fear or favor. And I thought that was a value that was universal. That was probably a little naive of me, but as I progressed in my career and then under Cy Vance, it became clear that I was very much, sort of the iconoclast for doing that. And so when the Construction Fraud Task Force kind of came about organically, it came out of a case, as you mentioned in your lovely introduction of me, that involved the falsification of concrete safety tests at the New World Trade Center, Yankee Stadium, Second Avenue Subway, and like scores of other New York City landmarks. And that case, which started under Morgenthau, it started as a very small case. And I give this as an example because I think it really sort of, kind of is a symbol of how the criminal justice system often works, which is that, too often, people just do the case in front of them without really kind of questioning the underlying facts. So this was a case that a man who was formerly incarcerated, who had become a member of the Teamsters Union and was working as an inspector at Yankee Stadium. And the case was brought to me as a one-off that he had faked a test. And it was, going to be an easy one. We have this, formerly, this felon who faked a test, just go ahead and process him and, don't worry about it. But the reality is, just as a cynical New Yorker, what I realized was, as like all of us who take the subway, he was carrying all this heavy equipment from Brownsville, Brooklyn up to Yankee Stadium every single day. It didn't make sense to me. He would jump up and down the stairs of the subway, carrying all that heavy equipment if he was going to fake tests. So just being a little bit cynical, what happened is I realized that, you know, uncovering and working side by side with public and private actors, we realized that in fact he hadn't. What had really happened is that there was an automated software system that the CEO of this company and others basically had created. And basically anytime that there were safety tests that didn't, you know, fall in the expected range, it was changed. And it wasn't something that was just limited to this company. It actually was throughout the industry. So what I saw was that by questioning what's just sort of obvious in front of me, what might be the easy case, brought us to a much more significant case that ultimately brought justice not only to, you know, that particular, you know, those projects, but ultimately changed the building code. So that's kind of how I learned to do cases, and that continued, you know, through Vance. But the difference under Cy Vance was, you know, when I would do that, instead of being celebrated, I was very much kind of like, why do you keep making it hard? Why are you always doing this? Why are you bringing these cases? And it was causing problems, frankly, for, you know, the lawyers and the connected people that were in the inner circle. I was not in that inner circle.
Wow. Thank you for that clarification. And that really kind of sums up a lot of what you've seen and how you've reacted to it. I want to move on to another question. As a mom living in the tri-state area, safety is my concern. And New York has some of the strongest gun laws in the country, and most illegal guns are being shipped from, you know, southern states with very lax laws. Please tell us what you plan on doing about gun violence, because this is a major issue.
Absolutely. And as a mom of teenagers, my kids in that picture, that's from another time. They're 19 and 16. But what I'm going to tell you is that gun trafficking, you know, is the major problem in our city, because if you can't have a shooting without a gun. And as you started in your question, look, it's really hard to get a gun here in New York State. There are many background checks. There's all sorts of safety measures. But the reality is, you know, anyone who spent any time in the city knows that if you want an illegal gun, you can get it within a few hours. There is a very thriving market. So what it's about is really cutting off the source, as you mentioned. It comes up and down from North Carolina, Virginia. I've done these gun trafficking cases before, and it really requires that we work collaboratively with other jurisdictions, because even though North Carolina and Virginia, you know, have these laws, their prosecutors don't want them being used illegally either. They're more than happy to collaborate, and we can do that. So part of my mandate as DA, I think that anyone who's going to be elected to this position, one of the number one priorities has to be, you know, stopping the gun violence in the city. And so it will be about really shifting resources away from these low-level crimes that don't really do much for us, and going after this really high-level trafficking. And that means also when we learn of people possessing guns here, that we also prosecute it. It can't simply be, you know, we're just going to simply, give it no prosecution at all. That's a problem. It doesn't mean that we have to throw away the key with people, but we do need to take gun violence in particular very seriously, because if we don't punish it seriously, then people are going to continue to, you know, engage in it.
Very nice. Now I'm going to move on to one more question, or maybe two more if we have time. But the Manhattan D's office has effectively taken the very ignorant position that only the perfect victim can receive justice. And we know over and over again with the Me Too movement that this is no longer the case. And truly in the past, survivors have had very little say so in their process, so to speak. And with Harvey Weinstein and all the powerful men, locked up and put away as a result of this Me Too movement, you don't have to look too far to see the corruption that went down, even in prosecuting somebody like himself. Every person who reports a sex crime or a gender-based violence is entitled to justice and equal respect. How do you plan on making sure that you pave the way for other victims to not only feel comfortable to step up to the plate, but for them not to feel that the table will be turned on them and make them feel like they are guilty of sorts, like we see over and over again in these sex crimes?
Yeah, I started my career prosecuting serious domestic violence, and that has really informed even the cases, the corruption cases, and the wage theft cases, and things like that. Because I'll tell you, every case starts with a person and someone that has been harmed, and you need to take people seriously. And it's not simply about the legal, sort of elements of the crime. It's about understanding where people are in their lives when they get, into the district attorney's office. So what that means is not just thinking about what the lawyer does, but it starts with security. I spoke to a survivor, and she told me about the humiliation in wearing a sticker that said Special Victims Unit. It was like a branding of sorts. We can't make victims feel that they are somehow, less than. And we need to start with the idea that we believe women and we believe victims, and we're not treating them as that they're the accused. So to me, though, it's not always about doing the case that comes before you. It's about meeting the victim where she or he are, and then making sure that we bring, justice together. Sometimes that means doing the regular case. Sometimes that means finding a document crime. Sometimes that even means not doing a criminal case. But again, it has to be victim/survivor informed. For too long, this district attorney's office has made it about, winning, and it's made it about, what headlines they can do or not do. And that's why, frankly, with Harvey Weinstein, you saw that trajectory. It wasn't, it wasn't trendy to do it when the case came in 6 years ago. Then after public outcry, suddenly it was. We can never run a district attorney's office that way. That's just not justice.
Wow. Thank you so much for clarifying that. And listen, you have my vote. As a mom, as a New Yorker, I have followed your career. I have seen the ups and the downs, and I've seen the highs and the lows. And without a doubt, you have also been put in some, caught between a rock and a hard place, if you will, in some of your cases. But we're going to take the good for it being incredible and all the service that you've provided to New Yorkers for the last 25 years. And we are hoping that you are on your path to victory. I want to say thank you for, number one, taking the time to talk with me and clarifying so much that not just, not questions that I only have, but a lot of other fellow moms and New Yorkers. So thank you so much for being so gracious with your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And look, I'm always open to questions. This is my passion. This is my life's work. I care about justice. And if anything, of all the highs and lows, the lows have come out of, frankly, putting the cases before my own self-interest. And, that's something as moms we often do. It's not probably the best thing to do, but it got me here talking to all of you beautiful people. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I'm your host, Xen Sams. You're listening to A Moment of Xen on 710 WOR. That was Diana Florence. We'll be right back after this.
One of the world's most recognized fashion designers is Helen Yarmak. She turned a small clothing line to an international fashion brand and is one of the few independent luxury fashion houses in the industry. Her designs for men and women are timeless and they outlast changing trends, yet they stay adaptable to your individual style. Helen's goal for her clients is to express their individual uniqueness and beauty. To learn more about her offerings, visit HelenYarmak.com or to schedule an appointment, call 212-245-0777.
If you've missed out dining in New York City for the past year, it's time to visit the legendary Vice Cucina. Located in the heart of Midtown, Vice specializes in blending delicious Northern Italian and American cuisine with dishes such as the incredible taglione lobster, ravioli masala, ossobuco, and pappardelle al telefono, along with many other mouthwatering offerings. You deserve a great night out. Call Vice Cucina, 212-757-2600 or online at vicecucina.com.
Well, that's a wrap, my friends. Thank you for being such loyal listeners. Many of you have already texted me the word collaboration, and I love it. Keep those texts coming. Text feature me or collaboration to 917-575-2321. Again, that number is 917-575-2321. For those of you who are listening and want to see me, you can watch the full show Monday morning at 710wor.iheart.com/A Moment of Xen. Just click on the playlist down at the bottom of the page and I will populate. Remember to tune back in next Saturday at 7 p.m. I have an amazing and exciting lineup of guests, as I always do. Thank you for listening to A Moment of Xen. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Thanks to all of our sponsors: Romulus Entertainment, Biche Cucina, Helen Yarmack International, and pretty soon kicking in, the Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Till next week, and remember, happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it.